Guys, when I did my first video on lithium iron phosphate batteries, people expressed alarm that lithium iron phosphate batteries need phosphate because the truth is there's not actually all that much phosphate in North America. In fact, there's pretty much none. The only phosphate that there is non-battery grade phosphate. So North America, which is about to build a gigafactory for Ford, a gigafactory for General Motors has been built. Tesla is building one. There's already a gigafactory for Goshen High Tech. There's about 6 manufacturers building lithium iron phosphate battery gigafactories in the US right now. Yeah, the scale is enormous. But the question is, where are they going to get all the phosphate from? Most of the world's phosphate is in fact used for farming. And if we didn't have it for farming, in fact, 80% of the planet would starve to death within a matter of months. So that's needed. But the phosphate we get, a lot of it comes from Morocco, and it's a disputed territory. It's a very precarious situation. So in North America, I discovered that there's actually, in Canada, a massive deposit of phosphate, one of the biggest in the world. And this phosphate isn't just any ordinary phosphate. In fact, it's battery grade phosphate, which is incredibly valuable. So I got in contact with the mine owner, and there's been massive investment into this mine. And actually, mining hasn't begun yet, but it looks like it could soon. And this to me looks like potentially an investment opportunity. A lot of people have been saying to me, I want to invest in the EV industry or in the renewable energy industry or in some sector in this, but where do we put our money? And honestly, I've been a bit confused about this myself because, everything sort of feels like it's a little bit tapped out. It sort of feels like, oh, someone else discovered Tesla early days. Someone else discovered BYD. Warren Buffett discovered BYD in like 2008. Everything's sort of been discovered, but maybe this hasn't yet. Now, guys, forgive me, the quality of the interview isn't very good. Our internet connection wasn't great, but the information I think you'll find extremely valuable. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Sam.
Nice to meet you too. A pleasure.
Yeah,
I've watched a lot of your hard work.
no, I appreciate it. It's great. Now, you guys are doing a lot of hard work. I just saw today that there was a press release saying that you had more oversubscribed funding you'd raised. Before we get into that, maybe if you could introduce yourselves and you could tell us a bit about what you guys do.
So I'm John Pasalacqua. I'm the CEO of First Phosphate. First Phosphate is a very special company in that we've taken on the job of fully onshoring the LFP battery supply chain in North America, but also extends to Europe and to other countries that are interested. So we start from mine all the way to the production of phosphate concentrate, phosphoric acid, LFP cathode active material, and then the LFP batteries themselves. And we've been able to produce the first LFP battery cells made from fully North American critical minerals, as I'm showing right here. These are the first ones that have been crafted in North America with North American critical minerals. And we've cycled these 2,000 times, and they've worked, which means they're fully commercially ready, even though we made a small batch. And the whole thing was just to prove that, North America can do it on its own. We can onshore the supply chain. And it all starts with our high purity igneous phosphate, which is very rare and found in a special area of Quebec.
That's exciting. Phosphate is something I've talked about on the channel before, and I think the United States hasn't been using phosphate not really from the US. They've been importing it, most of it. Is that correct?
So I think if we step back a little bit, so
Yeah,
phosphate is generally used for food production, for making fertilizer, and
yeah.
there's really two types of phosphate. There's sedimentary phosphate, which is kind of old seabeds, old whales, old dinosaur bones, and that kind of stuff, and then there's igneous phosphate from lava rock. The igneous phosphate is only 5% of the world's phosphate, whereas the sedimentary is 95% of the world's phosphate. So to this day in the United States, the phosphate is sedimentary. And because of that, it holds a lot of impurities and it's good for making fertilizer, but it doesn't make that much purified phosphoric for batteries. And there's companies right now in the United States that are making purified phosphoric acid, and the purified phosphoric acid that they're making is already off taken. It's been off taken to, beverage
Mm.
manufacturers, something like a Coca-Cola, Colgate, something like that, or water treatment, um, uh, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, baked goods, things like that. So there isn't a lot of purified phosphoric acid for the battery industry, and that's going to be one of the main lynch points. Everyone's talking lithium all day long, but until you got the phosphate, there's trouble because it's a lynch point in making the batteries, which are now, as you know, 60, 70, even up to 80% of the batteries out there now are LFP. So the phosphate becomes very
Yeah.
important. Phosphate from this igneous rock is especially important because almost 100% of it goes into directly into high purity phosphoric acid because of the purity of the rock.
How did you first get into, I mean, this is a very unusual um, and very interesting line of work, mining phosphate, purifying phosphate. How did you first get into this? Like, what was your background?
Yeah, well, quite by accident. So my background is technology. I used to work in the tech industry. I started my own search engines back in the late 1990s industry. So at the time, we were looking for an asset for a financial venture in the phosphate business. We were looking at it for agriculture, and we stumbled upon this very rare igneous rock in Quebec, and we were told it was too pure for fertilizer. It was, a little bit expensive to produce just for fertilizer, and the economics and logistics were tough. And then we started searching, and while I was in the fertilizer pile, I saw the battery, right? And being a technology guy, I was like, oh my gosh, there's something here. So we studied the industry, we studied the dynamics of the industry, and we understood that there is a lot of phosphate, there is a lot of fertilizer grade phosphate, but not a lot of battery grade phosphate, and that's going to be a
Yeah.
real shortage right at the time when LFP was starting to really take off 3 years ago. So we just took the bull by the horns and we ran with it, and here we are.
And to start your own mine, did you start the mine from scratch?
Just to be clear, the mine is not started yet. The mine
Yep.
is under feasibility study. That's our next step. We're hoping to have
Yep.
an operational mine by 2029. But yeah, we looked around the whole area of Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, Quebec, where there was this really precious phosphate, and we had to identify the phosphate that was closest to infrastructure. So we finally found a very long, good showing of phosphate, about 2.5 kilometers long, 300 meters wide, and it goes down at least 300 meters and then some. And it's close to infrastructure, and it's close to the deep sea port of Saguenay. So all the elements are there logistically as well.
So you've found all this phosphate. How did you find it all? What was the process behind that?
Well, it's kind of interesting, Sam. There was a lot of different phosphate showings in this particular area. There had been a forestry industry clearing. So the forestry industry went in there to clear a lot of the land. They had a permit to do it. And when they do that, they have to make roads. So they have to move rock to make roads. And the prospectors go behind them just like chickens looking for bugs after the grass has been cut, and they look at
Yep.
the rocks to see what's there. And that's how the way they discovered this. And then we had very good contacts in the area with all the prospectors, and we looked at it, we liked it, and we purchased the claims from them, and the rest is history. And then obviously there's a lot of geological work too, right? To actually go down and drill. So
Yeah.
we've done 3,000 meters of drilling to date. We're doing another, 30,000 meters to date. We're doing another 30,000 meters. That's going to end this February, and then we'll have, our resource finished, move into a feasibility study, and hopefully have an operational mine by 2029.
Do you know about how much phosphate you have? Do you know approximately the quantity that's there?
Yeah, and let me give it to you in something that we can all understand on this channel.
Yeah.
It's about enough phosphate to make 350 gigawatt hours of LFP CAM. That's about 700,000 tons of LFP CAM per annum for the next 23 to 40 to 50 plus years, perhaps.
All right. So there's a lot. There's a lot of phosphate there.
Yeah. To,
Yeah.
to give you an example, and I usually give it to people in terms of, EVs.
Yep.
Basically, it's enough to power half the fleet of new vehicles in North America per annum. So there's 12 million new vehicles being produced between Canada, USA, and Mexico. So it's enough to power 6 million new automobiles or electric vehicles per annum for the next, 20 to 40 plus years.
Wow. That's a lot. So the idea is get the mine happening in 2029, start withdrawing the phosphate, and then where would it go from there? What's the next step?
So it's basically a six-step process, and maybe at this point, if you could show to your viewers on our website, first
Yep.
you take this igneous anorthosite rock. There's a nice diagram there. From there, it becomes phosphate concentrate through a separation process, which is solventless, environmentally friendly. From there, we make purified phosphoric acid in a few steps. From there, you mix it with iron. We have iron on the property as well as a secondary recovery. So we make iron phosphate precursor. And then you add lithium carbonate that makes LFP CAM. And as you know, there's also these new one pot methods, methods where they blend it all together. So it can be made many ways, but you'd make LFP CAM out of the phosphate and the iron and the lithium. And then from there, what we did is we got graphite from Nouveau Monde Graphite in Montreal, and we put it together into making these 18650 cells. So that would be the process, taking the anode material, the cathode material, and making a cell.
So that cell you showed us before, are you guys thinking of making your own batteries as well? Or would that be from another company would be making those?
Well, I mean, it's all in partnership. I mean, not necessarily ourselves, perhaps. I don't know yet, but I I think definitely with a strong partnership, we would go from mine all the way to battery. The reason we made the batteries is
Mm,
because if you stop at a cam, you're just showing people some powder, but we wanted to go all the
yeah.
way through because you get to show it. Like this hasn't been made in North America in 25 years. As you know, the technology was invented in North America. It was LFP was invented in Texas. And then between the University of Texas, University of Montreal, Hydro-Quebec, and an entity in France, they had the patent. They licensed it, but within a couple of years after that, it wasn't made in North America anymore beyond pilot, and in China really took
Mm,
off and started making it.
yeah.
So we're just showing that we brought it back. But what's important is the fact that these things were cycled 2,000 times and they perform like any other battery. It shows that all the materials that went in there, including our phosphate and our iron, are basically homologated and standardized and can work within a battery, and that's very important. So that's why we made the battery more than anything else, just to prove the whole process and that it can be made with North American critical minerals, and B that
Yeah.
our product our critical minerals are of the purity that can work in a commercial fashion.
So you're kind of bringing the supply chain to North America, which is a big positive. Is the government in with helping with funding for supply of critical minerals in, the US and Canada?
Well, I mean, the government funding a lot of areas of the supply chain, all the way
Yeah.
from the mining all the way down to making the cells, and are funding a lot of the companies along the way. I mean, we ourselves were really proud that to date we've been moving so fast. We've done all this in 3 years, and it's probably because I'm a technology guy. I look at it as technology, and I view the mine as an accelerator for the technology and not the other way around. So we've
Yep.
moved really fast. We don't have any government funding just yet. We might, but we're very proud of that. We're very, very proud to have paved our own road. But we've got good letters of interest from Export-Import Bank of the United States, Quebec government. Number of government entities and ministers have visited our properties. So we're quite happy with the government support, even though monetarily there has not been any to date.
Okay. But you have raised a lot of money from private investors. Is that correct?
We've raised about $42 million over the last
Yeah.
3 years. We've raised that just from friends and family offices, private investors. There's been no underwriters involved. So it's good, long, sustainable capital, non-toxic capital that's friendly, that understands what we're doing.
Do you have enough capital to get the mine operational, or is further capital needed?
Yeah, so the way that one works, Sam, is the big thing is to be able to get your feasibility study done and your permits.
Yep.
We're hoping to have the feasibility study done by end of 2026, and the permits by 2027, mid 2027, and then after that, the capex to build a mine like this, about almost 500 million US dollars. Believe it or
Yep.
not, that I believe that's the easier part, because at that point, that's when all the government entities come to the table and they're willing to build it, and the off takers come in, and we've got some serious commitments
Yep.
already. It's just to be able to get through your feasibility, to be able to get your permits, because that means a lot. It means that you've got the social acceptability to do it. You've got the resource, strength to do it. You've got the engineering that supports it. It is profitable, all of those things. And once the governments and the larger players see that that's in place, it becomes a little bit of a feeding frenzy to see who can get it. Because it's really interesting what I was saying to you before about, it sounded like we have a massive resource. So when I said we can, have 350 gigawatt hours that can power half of all the vehicles
Yeah.
produced in North America for 20 to 40 years, you're like, wow, that's a lot. But guess what? The EV section of LFP battery is only 7%. So I can power half of 7%. Where's the other 93% going to come for stationary energy storage? And you know this, right? Data
Yeah.
centers, robotics, drones, all kinds of other small appliances, vehicles, scooters. So there's such a need for this that it's unbelievable that once we get into
Mm.
permits, I mean, the funding becomes very much easier, I believe.
Easy to get. And the feasibility study, could you explain to people how that works and what that means?
Yeah. So you had asked about capital. So right now we have over about $22 million in the bank. And that's just about enough to get us through feasibility. Now, what does that mean? So we have to do our second set of drilling. We did our initial drilling, which was 30,000 meters of drilling. We have to do another
Yeah.
30,000 meters because the resource has to be in a certain format to be able to move into a feasibility study. You have to know that it's there. There's three levels. There's inferred, indicated, and measured. So we're getting everything up to what is the indicated and measured categories in geology. And then after that, you have to do environmental studies, which we've already started. You have to do special drilling to make sure that the soil stability and all that around the infrastructures. You've got to do engineering. And you have to also do a very big bulk sample, like the sampling that we've done now, and the material that you made to create the battery. Well, you have to do it on a much bigger scale, like just almost semi-industrial, so that you know that that can work once you do your concentrator and extractor at the mine site. So there's all of that, and then there's a number of studies that need to be put together. A full feasibility study. It's a full technical document. There's a lot of back and forth with the governments and the ministries and the engineers, and then you produce this document, and then after that. That document, there's a very special thing in Quebec called the BAPE in French, Bureau d'Audience Publique sur l'Environnement. It's just you have to sit down with the population in the area and you have to talk about the environment. They could ask you a lot of questions. And then after that, there's a permitting process that's more heavy with the government. And then you have your permits. We're hoping that would happen by, early to mid 2027. It's a very aggressive timeline, but we believe you have to move very aggressively in electrification because we need the stuff
Mm.
now.
Mm.
And so after that, then we have our permits. You're running into, contractors and all sorts of hopefully non-dilutive capital at that point to build out the mine.
So at this stage, you do know that there's a lot of phosphate there. You're just not 100% certain you can extract that phosphate economically. Would that be true?
Um, you could say that, but already as part of the earlier study is called a PEA, preliminary economic assessment. So that
Yep.
preliminary economic assessment is within 20 to 30% of what the feasibility study will show. And that one's showing pretty strong. It's showing a net present value of 2.1 billion, internal rate of return of 37%. And that's at what are very low igneous phosphate prices right now in the market, which we know are moving in the right direction, just like the lithium is starting to as well. So even at those low levels, we're very profitable. We have the same profitability as some of the better reserves of phosphate in the world, like some of the ones that are in Morocco. It's just because
Okay.
of our
Yeah.
yeah, it's because of our igneous nature, some of our secondary recoveries. So we know that it's going to be profitable. But you're right; it's kind of like dotting the i's and crossing the t's, as they say, is the feasibility study, really driving through all the elements. Like, okay, how's the hydro line going to work? What are the new roads you need to build? What are the routes you're going to take to the port? All of that is very good, Sam, because we're basically an open pit mine. We're sitting at surface. So it's almost like a gigantic gravel pit that's 2.5 kilometers long by 300 meters wide and 300 meters deep. We're about just under 5 kilometers from the main provincial highways. We're on, a hydro line. We've got workforce in the area. It's very nice. The the mine is the eventual mine is in a really perfect place. It's right at the end of a municipality, so it doesn't really bother anybody, but it's also close enough that you don't even have to have a work camp. People can drive into work at from half an hour to 45 minutes from some of the neighboring towns, which is incredible in the world of mining. Usually, you got to leave your family for
Yeah.
months on end and go up to the north somewhere. As you know, in Australia, right, they got to go into the interior. But this is really, really quite clever. So it's everyone's very excited about it.
So at this stage, you've just raised more funds within the last 24 hours, and it said it was oversubscribed. Does that mean you're not looking for more investors? You've got everything you need, and now you're basically going from here just to the feasibility, and whoever's on board now, they're the ones who are going to benefit from this.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So basically, we've got, like I said, we've got over $20 million in the bank. That's probably enough to get us through feasibility and part of the permitting. It might be enough. You never know with these things. There's always a little bit of a
Yeah.
contingency, but we're pretty well cashed up for it. Our share price is doing really well. And so, yes, anybody wanting to benefit now would, unless we have future financings, which might not be for a while, would have to look to the stock market. As you see up there, our ticker symbols, right? We're PHOS on the Canadian Securities Exchange. We're traded in
Yep.
Frankfurt as KD0 and on the OTCQX in the United States, which is the highest listing board on the OTC. We're FRSPF.
Yep. Okay. Now, I know General Motors and Ford are planning on building lithium iron phosphate batteries, manufacturing those and putting those into a lot of their cars in the future. They've mentioned that that will help them keep reduce prices for their EVs. And obviously, with the current US politics and everything else, it would benefit you guys to have them, um, wanting to use your phosphate. I'm going to assume that they would need to use your phosphate at some point in time, especially considering the economics of LFP batteries being cheaper, longer lasting than NMC, NCM batteries. Have you had any preliminary conversations at all or plan to do so with any of the big OEMs or even
Yeah,
Tesla
so
potentially as well?
Yeah, so what I will say to that is, as you know, there's going to be a massive need for this, and it's not just EVs, right? It's energy storage, it's data centers,
Yeah.
it's mobility of all kinds. I will say that the industry is very small. Yes, we have had significant conversations with, many in the EV space, many in the storage space, many in the data center space, drone space, everybody. We've spoken with everybody. Everybody's very interested in what we have to offer. If you look at it though now, right now, things are changing rather quickly, but until now, all these companies have been importing all their batteries pretty much finished from China. So
Mm.
there hasn't been a need for now, but yes, everyone is really looking to see how they can make this happen. I think there was some news out of Tesla today. If you saw it, they've ordered all of their suppliers to stop sourcing out of China. So it's headlines like that. GM has done the same. I think it's also come out of Ford. And like you said, there's been some initiatives even in the United States where Tesla is building its own battery plants. We don't know how much of that is all being sourced locally. We believe that they're starting with kind of the packs, and then the cells were coming in from China, and now they're trying to make them cells themselves. The next step will be what goes into the cell, and that's where we will become of interest to all of these manufacturers at some point. So we're just patiently waiting our time. We're doing our job. We're preparing our resource, and
Mm.
we're waiting for everyone to do their job as well. But it all seems to be moving in the right direction in terms of there being a massive need for minerals for a local supply chain here very shortly, imminently.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's necessary. I am intrigued as well. I have seen a number of companies in the United States basically begin building lithium iron phosphate batteries. And I also saw an article um, from, I think it was LG Chem, where they had begun building lithium iron phosphate batteries with high nickel content, which provided the same energy density, in fact, slightly higher energy density in some cases than NMC batteries, but those batteries were cheaper to produce. So that's an interesting development there. Did you see that?
Do you mean with manganese content or nickel content?
There was a high nickel battery as well. That
Huh.
I did a separate video on this. So it had manganese, but a high nickel battery, and they were saying that it's like a hybrid lithium iron phosphate battery. Very interesting. So it seems like there's a lot of investment in the US right now on lithium iron phosphate batteries, and a lot of people are seeing them as the future. However, Sodium ion batteries. How do you see that playing out with lithium ion phosphate and sodium batteries?
That's a great
Do you think
question.
they could take some of the market?
Well, it's a great question. I get it quite often. So, what's interesting about the sodium, at least from my understanding, is the sodium be replacing the lithium, but it won't necessarily be replacing the phosphate, because I'm hearing of a precursor called sodium iron phosphate. Oh, well, iron phosphate, but the batteries are really sodium iron phosphate. Even though they call them sodium ion batteries, it means they replace
Mm,
the lithium, but they'll be sodium iron phosphate. So it wouldn't really affect the phosphate. And the reason I think for that, Sam, is because the phosphate is quite economical. I mean, it obviously needs to be pure and all of that, but you can get igneous phosphate or regular phosphate, around $300 to $500 a ton. That's for the igneous phosphate. Um, and so, I don't know what other element out there on the face of the planet you can get any cheaper. The sodium is a little bit cheaper, but street salt already goes for I don't know, 150, $200 per ton, and then you need purified sodium, so that does compete with lithium, right? When you're talking lithium at, I don't know,
yeah.
up to $9,000 a ton. So,
Mm.
I don't know what the high purity sodium goes for, but it would certainly be cheaper, but they would still need the iron phosphate to complete the loop of sodium iron phosphate is what I'm trying to say.
Now you've sent me through some links about what's happening with you. Your mine site, then you've got your announced your agreement with the port for your phosphoric acid facility. What's this phosphoric acid facility? Can you explain that?
Yeah, that's really cool. So basically, as I was saying, the mine site is at 70 kilometers from the deep sea port of Saguenay. And that's key, right? Because phosphate, you're moving it, it's like I was saying, about $300 to $500 US per ton of this igneous
Yeah.
phosphate concentrate. So you're moving a lot of material. It's not like moving an ounce of gold, right? You're moving a lot of material. So you have to be close to infrastructure. So the port of Saguenay is a deep sea port. So our plan is once we mine, to move all that concentrate, which will be produced at the mine site, 70 kilometers to the deep sea port of Saguenay. Then about 400,000 tons of that, or up to 400,000 tons, will go out to off-takers, whereas some of them are definitive already. But 500,000 tons of it will remain back for us. And what we do with that is there's a process to make phosphoric acid where you take the phosphate concentrate, you react it with sulfuric acid, and you get phosphoric acid. So we'll be creating about 190,000 tons of phosphoric acid. That purifies to about 180,000 tons of purified phosphoric acid, which can supply almost 400,000 tons of LFP cathode active material, or a little bit more. So our idea is a little bit less than half of what's produced by the mine will be sent off to off takers, and then more than half would
Yep.
stay back so that we can purify to our second transformation into phosphoric acid.
So you're adding more value. You're kind of being vertically integrated in the sense of, I'm going to guess most mining companies, do they make their own purified phosphoric acid or do they get someone else to do that?
Oh, that's a really good question. Because remember, to date, all of the phosphoric acid is being made for fertilizer for agriculture. No one's making this for LFP
Mm,
battery, except maybe in China.
yeah.
But again, there's a few different processes going on there. But in the West, for example, it's coming from sedimentary rock. They're doing one quick purification, and then they're moving it into fertilizer. Some of the bigger companies, there's only 5 of them right now in the Western world. They will take a portion of that phosphate for fertilizer, just the cleanest part of it. They'll hyper purify it, and that becomes purified phosphoric acid. But like I was saying before, that's already off taken to beverages, like carbonated beverages like Coca-Cola, things like Colgate,
Yeah.
water treatment, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, baked goods, a number of industry products. So there isn't that much excess capacity for LFP battery. So we're kind of the first
Mm,
ones that are doing this. Hey, we're making this directly. This is a mine. This is a mine with the highest
yeah.
purity phosphate, and it's being used only for LFP battery, right? So this is really new. We're pioneering it, but we're pioneering it on the basis of what already exists out there, and we're using all commercial existing technology. We can get all, like when we made these batteries here, we're getting to the battery with everything that's commercial. There's no R&D in any of the processes. It's all partnerships and commercial processes that have been out there in industry for over 50 years, most of them.
Okay. So you're going to build a facility then that will purify the phosphoric acid to make it battery grade. What will that cost? Would that be, have you worked out where that facility would be and what the cost would be and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, so the first facility to make the phosphate concentrate in at Bégin-La-Marche, which is the mine site, that's about 500 million USD. And then, like I was saying, Sam, when we move it over to Port of Saguenay, the phosphoric acid facility will be at the Port of Saguenay, and that's about another $650 million US
Yep.
to make for that facility. And then after that, the next facility is to make iron phosphate and lithium iron phosphate, and that all scales up based on what your sizing is.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that if you get through the feasibility study showing it's the economic feasibility completely, that you can do all this, then you will have no problem getting the funds that you'll need. Would you say that's correct?
I would say that that is correct. I would hope that would be
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we're the only company out there in the world, in the Western world, that's really doing this. There's a
Yeah.
massive need for it. There's going to be a massive shortage. Phosphate is a big choke point. There's
Yeah.
400 companies out there in lithium that trade all on all the exchanges in the world. There's really nobody. We're the only one, and I really mean that. We're the only one
Yeah.
that's focused fully on LFP battery, high purity
Yeah.
phosphate, fully vertically integrated. There's a couple other companies that are trying, but I mean, we're the earliest, the only source out there. It's going to have to come through us at some point too, if LFP stays the dominant technology, which we're sure it will be for at least the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Now you made a good point that in lithium, there's everyone's doing it. There's heaps of different sources of supply. In with what you're doing, there's no one doing it. Why is that? Why is there no other suppliers?
You want me to be very candid about it?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, sure. So I think, obviously LFP was invented in North America, but it quickly moved to China before we could even really commercialize it here. So in the West, we didn't know much about it. In the West, because of high-end SUVs that took NCM and NMC batteries, that's all the media liked to talk about was, oh, these batteries for these high-end SUVs. But creepy crawly, the LFP battery is now 70 to 80% of the world's batteries out there. And if we want to bring that to
mm,
North America, well, we're going to have to make LFP. Well, everybody concentrated on lithium, right? Because it was with nickel, manganese, cobalt batteries. They focused on nickel, manganese, and cobalt, and they realized cobalt's hard to get to. Nickel's expensive. There's not enough of it. Manganese as well. So to really, expand batteries out there, you need LFP. Everyone's just coming on to that reality right now. And I also think it's a little bit of an immature market in North America and in the West because we never really made batteries. So it's all
mm.
kind of a little bit of a fantasy for us in many ways. And so everyone grabs onto lithium, right? It's lithium ion. Oh, it's lithium, lithium, lithium. But everybody who really knows it, there's a lot of things that go into making a battery, right? There's a cathode, there's an anode, there's
Mm.
coils, there's foils, there's lots of technology, there's all kinds of elements, there's an electrolyte, but everyone focused on lithium, and that's what the investors have got in their heads. But people are starting to understand, well, okay, well, what else is there? And wow, that's the lynch point. So all the lithium in the world, all those companies in lithium, they're not worth too much when LFP is now 70, 80% of the world's phosphate, of the world's battery market, and you don't have the phosphate. But we got the phosphate. So I feel we're like so
Mm.
brilliantly positioned for this. And I'm just happy to see it play out. And I'm just happy the market that's really catching up to the need for this. Like lithium and phosphate, they're almost like a married couple. You can't have one without the other. But everyone's focusing on the lithium, whether that's the male or the female, I don't know. But it's the one partner. Where's the other partner? Phosphate, right?
I've heard there's a lot of conflict as well with the phosphate supply. A lot of the phosphate comes from an area in Morocco near the Algerian border, and I've seen that there's been some armed conflict with that phosphate source and some controversy over that supply. Even at one point, I think that production there was stalled because of a war that was going on there. Do you know much about that?
Um, I do, and there's also some other places as well. In Tunisia now, there's been a lot of revolts with the way they've been mining the phosphate. A lot of complaints over the environment, and it's been real upheaval socially. In that part of Morocco, the southern part called Western Sahara, there's always been a conflict as to who owns the land. It was ex-Spanish colony. Now
Yeah.
it's kind of on its own, and Morocco claims it. I don't want to get into the politics of it, but yeah, a lot of the phosphate. There's a lot of phosphate on the Moroccan side, but also on the Western Sahara side. The better phosphate reserves tend to be there. So it has been a little bit controversial. And there's the other thing that's controversial about phosphate, especially sedimentary phosphate, is that all the slag that's produced. So when you react it with sulfuric acid, all the cadmium, uranium, and thorium that's in this sedimentary phosphate goes into what is the gypsum slag, and you create 5 times the amount of gypsum than you do the phosphoric acid when you're purifying phosphate. So that's been another big issue around the world is the polluting factor. But we are clean, we are traceable, we're environmentally friendly. The gypsum that comes out of
Yeah.
our process can be used to make construction grade plaster, construction grade prefab homes. So there's no contamination in it whatsoever. So yeah, we're away from war, civil strife, uh, pollution, and some of the other factors that have been really controversial in phosphate. It's kind of one of those sad things, in order to without phosphate, the sedimentary phosphate, half of the world's population could be wiped out in 6 months because phosphate is just so
Food.
needed for food because
Yeah.
we don't have enough arable land. But to make that
Yeah.
phosphate to make food, you're actually polluting the world. It's one of those things, one of those catch-22s of humanity.
I don't think there's anything we can do about that either. I mean, it seems to me it's 100% essential for the food production. There's not enough land to just continue um, planting in different places because obviously, from what I understand, when you grow in a certain area, it does remove some of the minerals. So then you need the phosphate to regrow again in that area, in that same land space. Is that correct?
Look, I'm not an expert, but from my understanding, it's you need so you have good fields and they're
Yep.
producing what Mother Nature allows them to produce, but you want to produce 5, 10 times more. So you start loading
Mm.
them up with fertilizers. But once you do that, you can't go back, right?
Mm.
Because you've kind of killed the soils, or you've replenished the soils in a way that they can never go back to the way that they were, or
Yeah.
at least it would take many years to do that. We saw that in Sri Lanka. They tried to go to organic fertilizers, and they just couldn't produce the crops, and there was revolts over this, and that was over phosphate.
Yeah.
Um, and then so that brings up another important thing here. People say that there is peak phosphate in the world. Other people say there isn't. Well, there's peak phosphate in every single country of the world other than Morocco, pretty much. Every other country in the world has no more than 10 years of phosphate left, and most of it's sedimentary. And then, Morocco really becomes the breadbasket of phosphate, the breadbasket that to feed the
Uh,
world.
yeah.
So, that's another problem for phosphate, right? Do you want to put it into your electric vehicle or your storage batteries, or you want to put it into somebody's mouth? So this is why this igneous phosphate that we're developing is very important, because it doesn't have any of these irritants that you were talking about, which is, there's no civil strife around it. There's no pollution.
Mm.
There's no
Mm.
environmental factors. And also
Mm.
it's a new source of phosphate. It's not like you're taking an old source away from people's mouths to put them into electronics. So it's a perfect solution what we have. And it makes a lot
Yeah.
of purified phosphoric acid. It's so pure, 100% of it goes into battery. You don't touch the fertilizer world. And that's the beauty of what we've created here, and what
Yeah.
we've discovered and put together.
Often when people want to invest in a company, they want to know a bit about the CEO. And because, you're the man driving this. Is there anything you can tell people about yourself, in terms of your background that would give them that confidence that this is going to be the big thing?
Um, wow. I guess, I can tell you what I've done. So,
Yeah.
I used to run my own private family office. I've been in the financial and the technology industries for a number of years. And I was so convinced that I've put $2 million of my own money into this, um,
Yeah.
and become CEO. And, we run a really
And
great
then you
team.
convinced other people to get on board with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Was
we've,
that
we've
hard?
been executing. Well, it is in the beginning, but you execute and you show that you have a plan, and it grows upon itself. And you also have to have the passion, and you have to have the love for it, the love for people, the love for investing. And I think above all, Sam, is the responsibility for people's capital, right? We have a
Yeah.
really large set of responsibility on our shoulders to the investors, but also to the local communities, the populations, the indigenous groups out there, the local groups, the governments, to electrification in general. There's a lot of responsibility, and we don't take that lightly, and so I like that. I like to be able to bring it all together, as difficult as it can be sometimes.
You're doing a good job at getting the media to actually talk about what's happening. And I mean, there's major news articles from very reputable global organizations that are coming out even within the last 24 hours about your recent funding round. You seem to be very, very organized, and you've certainly got a lot of information out there about what you're doing. Have you got a PR team? Is that part of this?
Really,
No.
like I said, I was on the internet very early in 1998, and I ran some search engines around trade shows, and I learned how to do a lot with a little at that time.
Yeah.
So we are very effective communicators on the internet. We're very effective with our press. And what we do the best, I think, is we try to be direct to people. We don't like to have PR agencies or media agencies in the middle. We find that they muck up our message, and we just try to like communicate like regular human beings. Sometimes that can blow up on you because you're a little bit too close to people, but I find the 98% of the time it's the best way to be. And so we have a really good organic kind of like I wouldn't say almost cultish following, but people really appreciate the work that we're doing. And the investors, I've got investors got like $10 into this, and I got investors that got 3 million into this, and they all really appreciate what we're doing. And they're really, really, really big believers. A lot of people that believe in electrification, believe in,
Yeah.
I guess, a better world, if you will, a world that's not only
Yeah.
away from hydrocarbons, but just a better way to do mining, a better way to communicate, a better way to do business. We try the best that we can. It's never easy, but we have a lot of good people behind us, which is great. That's what really keeps me going, to tell you the truth.
So you found some bigger investors. How did you find those? How did they find you, I should say?
Well, you got to pretty much find them. Some of
Yeah.
them find you, but then you got to find them. It's always a process. Um, I guess it's just by, like you said, like a good PR presence, doing good by the communities, good word of mouth, working hard. And I think the biggest thing for us, Sam, has been just the sheer rate and speed at which we execute, and we execute for the most part well. We're always going to make some mistakes, but we execute quickly. And at first we were told, oh, you know nothing about mining. What are you doing here? And this, you don't know that. But now people say, wow, you're like the model for the future. So now I feel like I got even more responsibility on my shoulders. But we got an amazing team around the
Yeah.
world, so that keeps us going, and that's brought in a lot of investors too. Just word of mouth, stock markets.
You've done a funding round as oversubscribed. Will there be another funding round in the future?
There should be. Right now, I think we're pretty good for capital. There's still a little
Yeah.
bit left on this round. If anyone's interested, they can reach out to me. I'm just john@firstphosphate.com. Or like I said, they can always go into the market. There's three markets. There's the Canadian, there's the US, and the Frankfurt Exchange. Um, but yeah, I mean, we at some point there's always need for capital, but I think we're good for now. Like I said, we're probably good for about 12 to 16 months here until we get through the feasibility and the permitting. But we are still open on a small final round here that just closed the other day. If anybody has any interest, they can definitely reach out to me.
Mate, I find this really intriguing, and I've enjoyed learning some more about this industry from you. Is there anything else you want to share with people that they might potentially be of advantage to them to know about this sector?
Well, I think everybody should listen to the Viking. It's always been a real pleasure, Sam. All of your stuff's been it's just been fantastic, been very inspirational. I think we try to communicate in the same way, break it down for
Yep.
people. And I just tell people, like, just remember, right? Like, if you're into LFP or if you're into batteries, don't just think about the lithium, but it's time to start thinking about something else, everything else in the battery. And when you get the phosphate, first phosphate is definitely the spot. That's what we want to be. We're so hyper focused on this LFP mind to market right here.
So many people say to me, yeah, they say to me, "Oh, I want to get into this sector, and it's the thing. This is the next gold rush. What should I do? What should I do?" And this is a very, very common theme. So many people seeing there is opportunities, but what are they? What can I get into? And you've obviously been one of those people who have identified a what is a very obvious. It's all. I was just earlier today. I was looking in the fridge and I needed to find some milk, and there was stuff everywhere, and the milk wasn't in the normal spot, but it was actually right in front of my face, but I didn't see it. And I kind of think this phosphate, like it's right in front of people's faces, and they're not seeing it, and you have identified that. It's intriguing to see that what you said before is a really good point. That we're all seeing the lithium, but not the phosphate need, and you've identified that need in the market, which is really exciting.
It really is. We took some, like they say, another one man's trash is another man's treasure. Like no one was looking at this high purity phosphate, the highest purity in the world, and like Saint John was too pure. Nobody wanted it. And as you know, with batteries, it's all got to be too pure. So we just took it and we just ran with it. Yeah. So really,
Yeah.
really fun times.
Well, thanks for the convo, and hopefully we can get in touch again to see where you're at in 2026 and 2027. Keep people updated with what's happening.
Oh, that's great, Sam. Thank you so much. A
Yeah.
real pleasure.
All right, mate. Cheers. I'll speak to you soon.